Hey guys, today I got another quick tip for you, and it's on a 2010 Ford Expedition, but it also applies to the 2008 through 2012 Ford Escapes and Focuses of that era. And what the problem is, you go to start the car, and you put it to the start position, and it just does not crank. It's not a theft issue. The theft light's not flashing. It proves out just fine. It just does not crank, and it's not the starter either. So while it's in that start position, you're trying to crank it, here's an easy check you can do to see if it is the lock cylinder and the ignition switch that have just lost their tolerances and there's too much play in there. While you got to the crank position, go ahead and push in on the key and wiggle a little bit. And you can see now it's starting up, half engaging. It's starting though. Let's try it again. Wiggle in. And it starts right up, just like normal. So the end result on this one is just a faulty ignition switch. And what happens is that the contacts in there get so worn out that it just doesn't make good contact. And we had to manually force it over and make that good contact. And once we did that, it worked just fine. And I'll try to show you how it is on here. These lock cylinders actually, when they go to the start position, this part goes out. And it's going to push in a detent on that ignition switch internally, and it has to do that. That's why you got to check your lock cylinder too to make sure that it's not worn out, so it can have full contact with the ignition switch and push over in that detent. So I'll show you right here. We're in the off position, run, and you see how I jutted out like that a little bit. Let's see if we do it. And when that's the start position right there, and that's what pushes out in that rod that goes over to the ignition switch. So it's very important that there's no looseness in here. If this is worn out from the key over the years, and of course internally in that ignition switch, if that's worn out, it's just not going to start until you manually force it over. So I just want to put this out there for you guys and help you out, because many people start jumping for the starters and everything else. And on the Escapes and Mariners and Focuses, there's actually a whole new lock module on there to fix that concern. That just hasps over the steering column, and you get the push-through rod, you get the new housing, and then you get a new ignition switch on there, and that takes care of multiple concerns on that one as far as binding keys and crank or no crank, no starts, obviously, and stuff like that. It takes care of all of that all at once, so it's just a faulty design, whereas this one is simply a worn out ignition switch, which isn't too common, but on certain vehicles on the Ford line it is common, so you got to watch out for it, do your testing, and like that test I showed you earlier, the pushing the key in, that's the easiest test you can do without busting out multimeters and begging people for wiring diagrams. So hopefully this helps.